Zoom recording. I'm going to go from the beginning. All right, welcome everybody to another edition of Think with a Drink. This is the weekly webinar series brought to you by the ARIES Foundation for Financial Education. And this week, Craig, we are doing, I think, something that's pretty much on everybody's mind right now. It's certainly topical in terms of what's going on. That's student loans, right? And student loans and what's happening or what's happened. And it's all been this month that's sort of gone on and where we're at with everything. So we're going to go over sort of what's happened, what's happening, and, some of the steps that you can sort of take in sort of dealing with all of this. Before we get into that, a little bit about us. We are, as we said, Think with a Drink is sponsored by the ARIES Foundation for Financial Education. You can find us on the web at ariesfoundation.org. We're a nonprofit. We're dedicated to the mission of trying to help everyone have a better relationship with their money. Because whether you realize it or not, you are in a relationship with your money. And just like every other relationship that you have, there are behaviors and triggers and things that cause us to act, well, a little crazy sometimes, Craig, when it deals with our money and our finances. So my name is Tom Alessi. I am the president of the ARIES Foundation. I have been in financial services for 24 years. I'm an investment advisor. That means I act as a fiduciary whenever I'm giving guidance or advice to any of my clients. I want to bring my vice president. Craig, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. So I'm Craig Richardson. I'm the clerk. And also vice president and janitor.
Head bottle washer, backroom scrubber, yes, everything.
I've been in financial services 19 years now, and I specialize in working with individuals and families to help them define their financial goals and have a better relationship with their money.
Yeah, and for everybody, that's a little inside baseball. So for those who have never gone through it or never ever done a corporate or a corporation, you actually do have to have a clerk listed on there. So Craig technically is listed as the vice president and clerk on our if you looked up ARIES, you would find that. So he's not kidding with that. He is literally also the clerk in terms of it. All right, so a little bit, we call this Think with a Drink, and the reason for that is that we really try to take money, finances, money matters, things that generally for most, the average person, Greg, tends to feel a little intimidating, a little challenging. And for a lot, and most of the people that we end up talking to, they just want to put it off. They really don't want to think about it.
Yeah, and you think that, people are making a lot of money, that it's easier, but it's not. It doesn't matter how much someone makes, they're facing a lot of the same types of issues.
Absolutely. So we try to do that, try to make it more casual, more relatable, certainly more relaxed, and we hope a little bit of fun. And the best way we can think of to do that is if we have something cold to sip on. And so for this episode, we are drinking, this is Lime Lite, as in the Lime Lite, from our friends at Night Shift Brewing, right? So they actually have the sort of genesis of this is they have a beer called Night Light, right? So that's their sort of signature light beer. This is just, hey, we put lime in Night Light type of thing, but they brew it with natural lime and different ways of doing that. Only 120 calories, Craig, 4.3 ABV. So this is a summer, absolutely crushable beer. We've been on a kick with crushable beers lately. And certainly I figured, we were doing something on students, light beers, fruit in them, that sort of went with the whole student theme there, I thought. Yeah. And food pairing, because one of the things we always like to talk about is if we're pairing foods with it. And to be honest with you, I'm not really a big fan of lime beer. So the only thing I could think of was fish tacos.
I mean, come on, you don't like Corona lime and
Bud Light lime and all the other limes that are out there?
I want to sit on the beach with Snoop and talk about your bucket of Coronas.
No, Corona, you put the Corona doesn't brew the lime in it. You got to put the lime in the beer.
Yeah,
This
of course,
is
but it's no good without the lime. So, oh, I love this
gold.
goes too. The river horse. Well, that's good. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I could see on a really hot day, like we're on the beach,
Yeah,
like absolutely, this would be something like you could have this, I could certainly see you could plow through like two or three of these sitting on a hot beach, like without any problem whatsoever.
absolutely.
Certainly crushable. So we're moving on. Okay. So we're gonna start with the student loan where we are today. It's when, not when, but when. The student loans restart, right? Not the 10 worst places to retire. I don't know why that. I see. I didn't go through that. There you go, Craig. You didn't hit me over the head with that and say, "Hey, fix the agenda." So we'll just move on. There we go.
Just saw it. So there you go.
All right. So for those who are holding out hope, unfortunately, we are the bearers of bad news in this situation. The loan pause, the whatever they've called it, forbearance or whatever the thing that they've been doing since March of 2020 is
The
officially
Heroes Act.
over.
It was a Heroes Act they incorporated in order to put a pause on the student loans.
Right, but there's a certain term they used for it. I want to say forbearance, but whatever. It basically as of June 2nd, not too long ago, Congress passed the act for the debt ceiling crisis. Folded in there was this is no longer. That's it. It's done. 60 days from the end of this month, the pause comes off. So as of September 1st, these loans restart. You will get notices on that from there. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but generally the idea is think of it as like the beginning of October is when you're going to have to make a payment.
Yep.
No way around it at this point.
You say
Oh, well, I was going to say that it's basically, because I think there's some question out there about when or how that's going to happen. And so generally you're going to get a notice if you have an outstanding loan sometime in September. It's going to let you, it's like 3 weeks before your payment is due, just like any other bill.
Right, but not knowing what you packed into the rest of our presentation, I don't know where we're going to be retiring to, but there's lots of ways that you may not be restarting your loan, and we'll get into those.
Yeah, so we'll go through some of that, but at this point, the loan is going to restart. That's going to happen. The thing that's hanging in the balance right now is the debt forgiveness, right? So this was sort of the current regime, the President Biden's promise of something he enacted last year that said we're going to forgive 10,000 across the board for eligible borrowers, and if you've got Pell grants, we'll get you up to 20,000. It's something I get some guy. It's like 26 million people or something. It's a crazy number.
Yes, 6 million people. Yes.
Yeah, because they already have received. I want to say they received like 16 million applications
Before they shut it down last
right
year.
before they shut it down. Like everybody who got it, like immediately went, yes, I'm in.
Well, why wouldn't you? I mean, if you can get $20,000 of your debt forgiven, now for some people that's for everybody that's great if they can do that, but that doesn't solve the whole problem.
Correct, right? It piles on. But here's the deal. So the arguments have already been presented. SCOTUS, for those who are not getting the acronym, that's the Supreme Court of the United States. So SCOTUS has heard all the arguments. They are deliberating. They will give their answer sometime. We were hoping by the time we had scheduled this, but it hasn't come to being. So it's going to be sometime either June or July is what the promise is the belief is that the Supreme Court will rule on this and go from there.
Well, it's funny. I just read an article from Forbes and it came out 3 hours ago, believe it or not.
3 hours. Wow.
How timely is that? That we could see a decision as early as tomorrow, but as late as mid-July.
Yeah.
So it depends on when they, because they do release decisions tomorrow. It's just a matter of whether they do or not. And it's
Right.
also interesting because they're deliberating, there's been some other cases they've been giving some decisions on about who has standing to bring a suit. So this may end up positive for a lot of borrowers out there. We just don't know at this point.
Right, unfortunately, we don't have an answer there. As Craig had mentioned, that some of this, adds, how does this affect future borrowers? The people who are, the 15 to 17 years old who are gonna go to school, like, how does that affect them? Does that drive up the cost of college? Because now colleges are like, hey, wait, we just lost, $1 billion in revenue here.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know how they're gonna forgive it if I mean the or institutions wouldn't lose revenue because they've already been paid by the federal government. It's the federal government that won't get the revenue.
Well, or private, well, yeah, that's right, because he was only gonna forgive he wasn't gonna forgive private loans, right? It was only federal loans.
Correct. So it has to be a
Right.
federal loan. But they also would be forgiving Parent Plus loans as well, which people weren't sure they were going to do.
Right,
Now, there's also, like I said, that's just that portion, the 20%. There's also lots of other forgiveness programs based on credits that you built in as well.
correct,
You're
right,
going to get into that in a minute.
yeah. Yeah, so then, what should you do, right? So let's start from here. Let's start from the fact, as we just said, that the pause button is not gonna get pushed. And so you've got from now until October 1st to like wrap your head around, I've got to start making these payments again. I haven't been doing it for 3 years. Hopefully that you've been taking steps to either build up a reserve for when this was going to get turned back on again and didn't put all of your eggs in the, hey, I'm going to get forgiven basket.
Yeah.
But if you did, right, what we would suggest right now is to begin, like, try to go back and look at what your loan cost was. If you didn't have it, sort of try to calculate that out and at least start making the payments June, July, and August, September, right? So you've got basically 4 months that you can take and build up a little bit of a reserve here, but also so that Craig, our whole thing is about practicing that payment, like getting used to it so it's already in your budget.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to do is you could put the money away, right, in anticipation of making the payment in October, or you could start building it into your budget now and making payments because you're knocking down the principal. Once again, you have hopefully, a lot of people took advantage of the fact that it was no interest it was accruing. You could always make payments. They never stopped you from making payments. So the big deal is in every payment you made, 100% of it's going towards principal because you're not accumulating interest. So once again, if you don't start October, you've got 3 or 4 months here where you can start knocking down some of the principal.
Absolutely. And then the second one there is your loan service provider. So here's the thing with that, these loans, much like if you've ever experienced it with a mortgage, they get sold. So the provider you had originally may not be the provider today, may not have survived through all of this madness and may no longer be in business. And your loan just got moved on to somebody else. So if you haven't thought about it or haven't looked at it, the idea is to, one of the suggestions for everybody is to find your loan provider now.
Yep.
Right. One of the websites you can go to is studentaid.gov.
Yep.
It's studentaid.gov. And there's a way to log in there and you can see who that is. Just understand that if you're trying to reach out and call them now, everybody's in a panic and we're still in hybrid remote things and lack of workforce. So it's going to probably take more than one try, Craig.
Yeah, so you should start reaching out, at least gathering the information, like Tom said, about who your provider is, what your projected payments would be, that kind of thing. So if you need to make some changes, and those could be based on lots of things. I mean, a lot of people's incomes have changed significantly over the last 4 years for the better or the worse, right? So if you were making some of those income style payments, you might need to make adjustments with that. Maybe you went back to school during COVID. And so in that case, maybe, you're still in school. So maybe you can push it out a little bit further. So there could be lots of reasons that, you want to make a change in what's going on with your structure.
Yeah, and one of the things, and one of the most important, besides figuring out who has your loan now and what your rates are, and we'll get into that, but it's that if you were on an automatic debit and it got turned off because of the pause, you have to call to turn it back on.
Oh, right.
It doesn't automatically restart just because they push the button. So if you're thinking like, oh, I'm all set, I had it all set up. No. You got to go back in and restart it. So that's one of the main reasons that we tell everybody go, find that service provider.
The responsibility is on
Go
you.
ahead.
I'm saying
Yeah,
the responsibility is
absolutely.
on you. They're not going to come chasing you. You got to chase them, or
Right.
when they do
And
chase, it won't be good.
Right. And then, like Craig said about the changes, that's something that everybody's got to sort of think about, but you literally now have a couple of months, as Craig said, to sort of like we're talking about. This is just about being prepared. This is just about planning, which is a big thing for us. It's about understanding what you're spending, what your goals are, and what you need, obviously, to make these payments.
Mhm.
But if you've had changes in your income, then there are some things that you can do, which we will get into and talk about in terms of getting there.
Mhm.
But one of the things, Greg, I thought that was interesting was just to talk about, how long should somebody expect to have to pay off a student loan? I'm not sure that people really grasp this in their heads when they think about how long am I going to be paying this note for?
Well, I think the other question is how long should you be paying the note for? Right. So once again, everybody is eager to pay off that note as soon as they possibly can. And in some people that works, right? If you can, it's fantastic. The other thing is just like, I said my mother bought a house in 1980. And at the time, the mortgage was 25% of her income. Well, it was a $30,000 house. Her mortgage was $250. I can't even find, that's like the cable bill now.
Right.
So, sometimes you're going to have this education for the rest of your life. The issue is, can you afford the payments?
Exactly.
Right.
And
so
these loans go anywhere generally from 10 to 30 years.
Right. And if you're dragging it along, as long as it's affordable, those payments, they don't go up unless your income goes up. So
Right.
lesser and lesser significant in your total financial picture as time goes on, in my opinion.
Yeah. And here's one of the things that goes along with that, just in case you are not aware of it, that you can reduce that amount that's being charged for most cases with most providers. Again, you got to go to your service provider and do this. But if you sign up for the automatic debit payment, the ACH, as it's called in our world, that's direct from your bank,
Yep.
they will usually lower you by a quarter of a point.
Yeah, it's a little incentive because they don't have to chase you.
They don't have to chase you. Quarter of a point means it's saving you money, and you don't have to think about it. So this is something that is in, if you've practiced it and put it in place and understood it, now it's in my budget, then do it, because you're going to end up saving ultimately. Because anything we can do to reduce that rate is better than not.
You got to pay it anyway, so why not pay less if you can?
Right. So other steps, and I think this is what you were sort of talking about, Craig, when you were saying about the other forms of forgiveness.
Yeah.
Right. In different ways that you can do that. There are a lot of different situations that you can get. Is it public service loan forgiveness? It's PSLF. That's what it stands for, right?
Yep, that's correct.
Right.
Actually, she got her master's degree through a grant program because she worked in the inner city. So her entire master's, she had to jump through hoops every single semester to get it, but everything was forgiven. So
right. But the criteria, that's for teachers. So there is a thing for teachers. You have to work 5 consecutive years. You have to be in a classified inner city school, as Craig said, and you will qualify, and there's an amount that you can get forgiven based on that and based on the number of years. Yep. Same thing with public servants, the U.S. military, right? That's another one, right? That they can do that, right?
They used to have the GI Bill. I don't know if that's still something that's available.
Yeah, I don't think it's the GI, though it might be. I get, but I know that that's part of, it's the same, sort of falls into that same category.
If you did serve already, you went back to school, there may be some forgiveness built in there.
Correct, right. In terms of dealing with that, the tax deductions, right? So, student loan interest is tax deductible. So you do have the ability now. It doesn't help you now in June unless you filed an extension, but in terms of going through that. But as you think of this going forward in time, you can deduct the number I believe is $2,500 that you can deduct off student loan interest.
Is that above the line, or is that only if you itemize?
I think it's based on your AGI, I think is how that works. Above the line, but you have to fall into a certain criteria for it, right?
Yeah, I know the other thing too is if you've made 10 years worth of payments consistently, you can apply for forgiveness.
Really?
Yes, yeah, and depends on your income bracket and those types of things. But there's ways, if you make consistent payments for 10 years, there's forgiveness programs out there for that as well.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah.
So something else to be looking at. We put the refunds on there just because I know everybody thinks about taking a refund and blowing it somewhere, someplace, somehow, in terms of that. But it might be, since this is being turned back on, if you are getting a tax refund, to be thinking about using at least a portion, 50, 60, 70% of it to go towards paying down this or any other debt that you have. If you're taking the forced savings plan that the IRS is putting in place by giving you a tax refund, use it for good.
Absolutely. Yeah. The other thing to remember too, and I only bring this up because this does affect a lot of Americans, is that if you have a student loan through the federal government and you wind up in bankruptcy, that does not get wiped out when bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Private loans, however, may. So not that I'm in favor of trying to tip the scale in that direction for yourself, but you may look at as we say, you don't marry interest rates, you date them.
Yes.
Could you do some kind of consolidation to a lower interest rate that's maybe a private loan?
Right. Well, we'll talk about that in a second. That's the next slide.
You had that coming. Okay.
Yeah. No. So the last one on there is the employer assistance programs, right? So these are now, and they're coming. They're coming fast. This has to be, your employer has to have this available. The employer can contribute the numbers like $5,000. I think it's actually $5,250 that the employer can do on your behalf. It's a deduction to them.
Wow.
And can go, something that you can use to apply for it.
And this doesn't affect any other benefits they provide you, like your 401k or anything like that? No,
and it's only through 2025. So there's a short window. The window doesn't stay open. Well, they can always extend it, right? But right now the window is until 2025. This was part of the Secure Act.
Okay.
That they are able to do that. So this is something, if your company does not have it, certainly reach out to HR to ask about it. You can always come to us and ask us about it, because we're happy to make connections and sort of try to figure out if that's something that can be added. But this is, I think, the next wave of sort of employer benefit that's going to be coming.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I mean, employers are always looking for ways to retain employees, and without necessarily making a huge commitment like they do with the 401k and having to actually contribute. This is
right, and they can deduct it. So it's a deduction to the employer, and it's a benefit to the employee.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. All right, so now we get to your refinance.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump ahead on you.
No, that's okay, because the question is whether or not you should or shouldn't, right? So if you've had the loan, right? So here's the thing, as Craig said, for a lot of these, the rate is the rate. And if the rate is factored and it's done, it's based off the overnight lending rate, et cetera, and it's fairly static, right? There's not a lot that goes on there on the federal side. Private's a little bit different, and you might be able to have some wiggle room in the private sector. However, where interest rates are now and what's going on out there, I don't see, unless you're finding something, I think you're going to be hard pressed to find a deal based on if you've already had a number, because your rate should just re-kick whatever you were paying before.
Right, but I'm assuming that, you're probably going to have these loans through a couple of rate changes in the markets. And so just like your home, you buy it, maybe you're buying it right now, the interest rates are up for mortgages as well. But like we talk about, and when people ask about home ownership, don't marry the rate, right? You
Right.
marry the house. So when rates start to come down again, which they will at some point, then you can always refinance and try to get yourself a better deal on that side.
Right. However, just for right now, for where we are today,
Yeah.
first off, you wouldn't do anything if you've got a federal loan until this whole SCOTUS thing, the whole Supreme Court, the whole forgiveness ruling gets done.
Oh, absolutely
Because,
not. Don't bite off your nose and spite your face, for sure.
yeah, exactly. So, that's one of the things. And for, there was conversation with a lot of people back when this happened who had in, 2021, early 2022, done just that, refinance, went from federal to private because they were getting a better rate, they were going to get a better, deal.
Right.
And, they got X'd out, now their loan is not available for forgiveness. And so I just want to put, as Craig said, refinancing is always a dance that has to be looked at. Are you getting a benefit for doing it? By that, are you driving down enough of a decline in the interest rate that it's going to make sense for you?
There's pluses and minuses to everything you do, right? And you can't, for us to make a blanket statement about what you should do, right? It's based on your situation. How much debt are you holding? What's your career options ahead of you? What does your future look like? All those such, what are you trying to accomplish, or what responsibilities do you have to deal with now? So, and like I said, you have the unknown element of what is going to happen with some of this legislation.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a big part of it. Now, so what happens if, hey, worst case scenario, I've got this, now I have no, I can't do it. I can't make the payments. What can I do? Right. So you have the Fresh Start program. For those who don't know, the IRS has a Fresh Start program. It's almost like Greg said, it's not like bankruptcy, but it's a similar type of thing that allows you to sort of try to restart, rebuild yourself, if you will. However, right, you have to go and reply to this program before forbearance. That's what it was. It was forbearance. That's what they called it, right? So forbearance, right? Before the forbearance program ends, you have to be applied for this. Now, it's not open yet. So, the Department of Education doesn't have the window open yet.
Everybody's jumping off right now to go do this, right?
Right. So you got to figure that out and go through it. But the real critical piece is that if you don't do it, and the pause, gets lifted, the loans restart, and you haven't applied, you're out. You can't get in.
Yeah. So, and the issue here too is, without doing these things, a lot of people will say, well, I'm not going to bother with it until I have to, right? Or that sounds like a lot of work and it's confusing. It just seems like too much. The problem is that this can affect your credit, right?
Right. I have the website. See, I knew it. I just forgot. That's okay.
So this, you don't want to wait on these things. You want to get ahead of this. You don't want to wait till the dam breaks and now you're flooded and going, now what do I do?
Right.
Because this is you're not going to get away from it. So you might as well deal with it head on.
Right. And like I said, so there's the websites. They're listed on there. My eddebt.ed.gov. So myedebt.ed.gov, right? My educational debt, but it's eddebt.ed.gov to get information on the Fresh Start program, or you can go to studentaid.gov, and they have a number for the Department of Education's default resolutions group. It's 1-800-621-3115. 800-621-3115. So again, this, as Craig said, absolutely has to be done prior to the loan processing restart. So if you're in that situation and think, I can't do this, or I can't start paying again, my situation is so dire, follow these threads or go through some of that, because it's going to help you in terms of at least trying to get you in a better position.
Yeah, I mean, the government doesn't want to chase you. They'd rather you were chasing them. So there may be options that you're not aware of, that maybe Tom and I aren't aware of, that could help you.
Right.
So.
And so for anybody out there, if you have any questions, if you're in that situation, or you're in a situation with debt, not just student loan, but debt, one of the things we try to help everybody is understanding different ways and strategies of how to pay down debt, how to build better with your cash flow. We don't like to say budget. It's a word we don't like to use. So we try to say cash flow, but be better with your cash flow. You can always reach out to us. That's why we're here. If you're watching this on the YouTube channel or some other channel that we have, you can pause it, that QR code, just hold your phone up, shoot the QR code. It's going to open our calendar. You can schedule a time with us. There's no cost, there's no obligation. We're here just to have the conversation. Like I said, our goal is to help everybody have a better relationship with their money. You're not going to be able to paste in that link that's on there, but that's essentially the same thing as the QR code. So you can certainly do that. Carrying forward with this, we keep the think with a drink theme going, Craig, with what's on tap and what's coming up. So sort of going along similar lines here as we're thinking about this with money. So next week we're going to do, should I buy or should I lease? Because as you said, it's all, it's the interest rate thing, but it's not just on homes, right? This is everything. This is anything that you're talking about, a car, some big purchase. Should I buy or should I lease? And then on the 29th, it's halfway through the year. So we're going to look at what's gone on. And then we're going to look at projections, what we think is going to happen for the next 6 months here. And, where we're at last year, we were pretty much spot on. I'll tell anybody who's listening, because we predicted a wasteland that was going to occur at that point. And that's essentially what happened. So not that, hey, we're great, soothsayers or, have the crystal ball and all of that. But a lot of this is just having gone through and seen it over and over time, and everything, we get input from all different sources, and just sort of, factor all of that in and we'll look at what's happened the last 6 months and where we see that going.
And as a preview, I think we have a better prediction for what's coming.
We certainly hope so. So God bless. The Fed was not too friendly in terms of what they were talking about. So we'll see what happens with that. But anyway, you can always visit the website. It's ariesfoundation.org. You can always shoot us an email if you got a question. It's info@ariesfoundation.org. But like we said, just, if you got a question or there's some concern or something rattling around for you, reach out. Just pause it, hold your phone up, shoot the QR code, open our calendar, and we're happy to have a conversation with you, because that's why we're here. We're really trying to help everyone sort of get a handle on and be better with their money. Yeah, and on that, go ahead, Craig.
I said I'd love to talk to somebody else besides Tom.
Yeah. That would help you out in the great grand scheme of everything. And on that, we're going to say, Skol.